3 months after the fall of the false gods, Captain Taman stood in the great assembly hall on the fourth planet. The building had once been a Veltar temple, where thousands of aliens came to worship in fear. Now it was a meeting place where representatives from all the freed species came to talk as equals. Sektar, the young Kethai warrior who had thrown the first stone, was speaking to the crowd. He had been elected as the first president of the new Kepler Liberation Council. "We have spent 3 months learning to be free," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "It has not been easy. Some of us still want to kneel when we see the Veltar. Some of us still wait for gods to tell us what to do. But we are learning that the only gods we need are ourselves." In the front row, several Veltar sat listening. They looked very different now. Without their life-stealing technology, they had aged rapidly. Zephan, once a towering figure with glowing skin, was now a bent old alien who needed help walking, but he was alive. The freed species had decided not to execute their former oppressors. Instead, they had chosen something harder: forgiveness, with conditions. Dr. Minji had helped design the punishment. The Veltar were stripped of all their advanced technology and forced to live normal lifespans like everyone else. They had to spend their remaining years helping to repair the damage they had caused. "How are they adjusting?" Taman asked Minji as they watched the assembly. "Better than expected," she replied. "Some of them are actually happier now. They have been carrying the weight of pretending to be gods for so long that being normal feels like a relief." Zephan was working in a hospital on the mortal homeworld, helping to treat aliens who were sick from 3,000 years of having their life energy stolen. At first, his patients had been terrified of him. But slowly they began to see that he was just a tired old being who was trying to make up for his mistakes. "It is strange," he had told Minji during her last visit. "When I was a god, I had everything I wanted, but I was never happy. Now I have almost nothing, but sometimes I feel peaceful." Commander Hyunwoo approached them with a data pad. "Captain, we have the final reports from all the worlds. The transition to self-government is going well. Crime rates are actually lower than they were under Veltar rule." "How is that possible?" Taman asked. "Turns out people behave better when they choose to do good things instead of being forced to do them." Hyunwoo replied with a smile. The assembly was discussing trade agreements between the different worlds. For the first time in 3,000 years, the species of Kepler 442 were working together as partners instead of all serving the same masters. Buzkik, the Hrin pilot who had fought in the final battle, was explaining a new invention his people had developed. "We have learned to make small versions of the Veltar healing technology. But instead of stealing life energy from others, it uses energy from sunlight. Everyone can use it and no one gets hurt." The crowd buzzed with excitement. This was the kind of progress that was happening all over the system. Without the Veltar keeping them ignorant, the freed species were advancing quickly. "Captain," Sektar called out, noticing Taman in the crowd. "Would you like to say something to the assembly?" Taman walked to the speaking platform. The hall fell quiet as hundreds of aliens from dozens of species looked at him with respect and gratitude. "6 months ago, we came to your system looking for new friends," he began. "We found people who were trapped by lies and fear. Today we see those same people building a future based on truth and hope. You did not need us to save you. You just needed someone to show you that your gods could bleed." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, but Taman raised his hand for quiet. "However, I must give you a warning. Freedom is not easy. It requires constant work. You will face problems that your former gods never had to deal with. You will have to make hard choices, and sometimes you will make mistakes. But these problems and mistakes will be yours to solve and learn from. That is what makes you truly free." After the assembly, Taman walked through the streets of the city with his crew. The changes were visible everywhere. Where there had once been statues of the Veltar, there were now gardens where different species worked together. The old temples had been converted into schools, hospitals, and research centers. "What do you think will happen to them in the long run?" Minji asked. "I think they will do fine," Taman replied. "Maybe even better than fine. They have learned something that many civilizations never learn. That real strength comes from working together, not from being ruled by someone who claims to be stronger than you." They stopped at a small park where children from different species were playing together. Young Kethai, Hrin, and Mordal were sharing toys and games, their parents watching with smiles. This was something that had never happened before. Under Veltar rule, The species had been kept separate to prevent them from uniting. Engineer Deho was examining a piece of Veltar technology that had been converted into a playground slide. "You know what impresses me most about all this?" "What?" Taman asked. "They did not just tear down the old system. They built something better to replace it. That takes real wisdom." As the day ended, the crew of the Indomitable returned to their ship. They had been in the Kepler 442 system for 6 months, helping with the transition to freedom. But now it was time to continue their mission of exploration. The freed species gathered at the spaceport to say goodbye. Sektar presented Taman with a small crystal. "This contains a copy of our new constitution," he explained. "We wrote it together, all of us, in the language of every species. We want you to take it back to Earth so your people will know what we learned here." Taman accepted the crystal with both hands. "What did you learn?" "That there are no gods," Sektar replied. "Only people trying to do their best. Some of them use that as an excuse to hurt others, but most of them just want to live good lives with their families and friends. The trick is figuring out which kind of people you are dealing with." As the Indomitable prepared to leave, Taman looked back at the worlds they were leaving behind. The planets looked the same from space, but he knew everything had changed. "Captain," Yunwu said from his station, "we are receiving a message from the Veltar hospital on the second planet. Put it through." Zephon's aged face appeared on the screen. He looked tired, but somehow more peaceful than when they had first met him. "Captain Taman, I wanted to thank you before you left." "Thank me? For destroying your empire?" "For destroying my lies," Zephon corrected. "I spent so many years pretending to be something I was not that I forgot who I really was. Working in this hospital, helping people instead of using them, I remember now. I was a scientist once before I became drunk on power. Now I am a scientist again, trying to heal instead of harm. What will you do with the rest of your life?" "Learn," Zephon said simply. "Learn to be better than I was. Learn to help instead of hurt. Learn to live with the knowledge of what I did wrong, and try to balance it with doing things right." The transmission ended, and the Indomitable began its journey to the next star system, but the story of Kepler 442 would travel with them, and eventually reach Earth. Months later, when Taman filed his report with Space Command, he ended it with these words: "We went looking for new worlds and found new friends. We learned that the universe is full of people who are just trying to live good lives, and other people who try to stop them. Sometimes all it takes to tip the balance toward good is someone willing to stand up and say no to bullies, no matter how powerful they claim to be. The beings of Kepler 442 did not need us to save them. They just needed to remember that they could save themselves. I believe this is a lesson that applies throughout the galaxy. There are no gods among the stars, only people, and people, when they work together, can accomplish anything." Dr. Minji added her own note to the report. The most important discovery was not about alien technology or false gods. It was about the power of truth. When people know the truth, they can make good choices. When they are lied to, they cannot. Our job as explorers is not just to discover new worlds, but to help spread knowledge and truth wherever we go. Years later, the crystal that Sektar had given them would be displayed in the Museum of Galactic History on Earth. The plaque beneath it read, "Constitution of the Kepler Liberation Council. Proof that freedom is not given by gods or leaders, but taken by people who refuse to live on their knees." And in the Kepler 442 system, life went on. The freed species faced challenges and solved them together. They made mistakes and learned from them. They built cities and ships and art and music. They argued and made up and fell in love and raised children who would never know what it was like to worship false gods. They lived as free beings should live, with hope for tomorrow and the knowledge that their choices were their own. The gods were gone. The people remained, and that was exactly as it should be. The silence that followed the great shutdown lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. Across 12 worlds, billions of aliens stared at their fallen gods. The Veltar looked small and afraid without their glowing skin and floating temples. Then the silence broke. On the fourth planet, the young Kethai warrior Sektar picked up a stone and threw it at the nearest Veltar temple. The rock crashed through a window that no longer had protective energy shields. "They can be hurt," he shouted to his people. "They bleed just like us." Other aliens began throwing stones too. The Hryn buzzed their wings in angry songs instead of prayers. The Mordal poured out of their warship tanks and crawled toward Veltar buildings with fury in their large eyes. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Taman watched the rebellion start on every world. Minji, are you still broadcasting? Yes, Captain. Every alien in the system can hear us. Tell them to be careful. Angry gods might do desperate things, he was right. As their technology slowly came back online, the Veltar stopped pretending to be peaceful rulers. Zephon's voice returned to the airwaves, but now it was full of rage instead of divine authority. Ungrateful insects. We gave you civilization. We gave you peace. This is how you repay our kindness? On the third planet, Veltar soldiers in powered armor began marching out of their temples. But these were not the beautiful glowing beings the aliens remembered. With their technology failing, the soldiers looked like what they really were. Old, bitter creatures in metal suits wielding weapons they could barely control. Kill the rebels, Zephon commanded. Kill them all. If they will not worship us as gods, they will fear us as conquerors. The Veltar opened fire on crowds of unarmed civilians. Energy beams cut down hundreds of aliens who had only stones and angry words as weapons. Commander Hyunwoo turned to Taman with a troubled expression. Captain, we started this rebellion. Do we have a responsibility to protect these people? Taman stared at the tactical display showing massacres on a dozen worlds. We came here to explore, not to start a war. But we did start a war, Dr. Minji said quietly. When we exposed the truth, we knew this might happen. Engineer Daeho looked up from his repairs. Captain, my grandfather always told me something. If you see a bully hurting someone weaker, and you do nothing, then you are just as bad as the bully. On the screen, they watched Veltar aircraft drop poison gas on a city full of rebelling Mordal. Thousands of aquatic aliens died in their own water, choking on chemicals that turned their life-giving seas into death. That decides it, Taman said grimly. Red alert. All weapons hot. We are going to end this. Finally. Hyunwoo muttered, his fingers dancing over the tactical controls. But the Veltar were not finished with their desperate measures. Zephon's damaged command ship limped toward the third planet, broadcasting to all his remaining forces. Bring me the ultimate weapon, he ordered. If we cannot rule as gods, then we will destroy everything and start over. Deep beneath the Veltar homeworld, something ancient and terrible began to wake up. It had been sleeping for 3,000 years, waiting for the day when its creators might need to destroy an entire star system. Captain, Minji said, her voice tight with fear. I am detecting massive energy readings from the planet's core. Whatever they are powering up down there, it is big enough to crack planets. Taman felt a chill in his stomach. How long do we have? Maybe an hour before they can fire it. The Indomitable raced toward the third planet, but it was not alone. Despite their fear, ships from the rebelling worlds were flying to join the battle. They were small, weak vessels with only basic weapons, but their crews had decided they would rather die fighting than live as slaves. Sektar's voice came over the radio from a tiny Kethai fighter. Human ship, this is Sektar of the Free Kethai. We come to help you fight the false gods, more voices joined him. Hrin pilots in insect-shaped ships, mortal crews in vessels that looked like flying fish. Representatives from a dozen species all united for the first time in 3,000 years. This is Captain Taman. We are honored to fight beside you, but I must warn you, we are going up against technology more advanced than anything in this system. We know, replied a Hrin pilot named Buzzkick, but we also know something the Veltar have forgotten. We outnumber them 1,000 to 1. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Veltar had powerful weapons and strong shields, but they were used to fighting enemies who worshipped them. Now they faced angry beings who had nothing left to lose. The freed aliens attacked in swarms, using their numbers to overwhelm Veltar defenses. When one ship was destroyed, 3 more took its place. They crashed their fighters into Veltar temples, caring more about stopping their oppressors than about their own lives. The Indomitable led the charge, its advanced weapons carving through Veltar battle stations like a sword through paper. But Taman was careful to target only military installations. He did not want to hurt any Veltar civilians who might not support their leaders. Captain, Hyunwoo reported, we have cleared the orbital defenses. The planet's surface is open to attack. Good. Take us down to the energy source. We need to stop that weapon before... His words were cut off as space itself seemed to tear open. A massive ship emerged from the rip in reality, larger than anything they had seen before. It was not built like a temple. This vessel was pure war machine, covered in weapons that hurt to look at. Behold the devourer of worlds. Zephon's voice came from the war machine. This ship has destroyed entire civilizations. It can eat stars and use their energy as fuel. You cannot fight the power of true gods. The devourer fired its main weapon. A beam of dark energy that made space itself scream struck the Indomitable. For a moment, Taman thought they were going to die, but Deho had been ready. In the seconds before the attack, he had rerouted all power to the shields and activated every defensive system the ship had. The dark energy struck their shields and bounced off. Impossible, Zephon shrieked. You keep saying that, Taman replied calmly. But here is what is really impossible. Convincing people you are gods when they can see you bleeding. The truth was, the devourer was impressive, but it was also very old. It had been built when the Veltar were younger and smarter. The current generation barely knew how to use it. Hyunwoo targeted the ancient ship's weak points. The Indomitable's weapons punched through armor that had not been properly maintained for centuries. Systems that should have been repaired long ago began failing under stress. The hull is breaching, came panicked voices from the devourer. We are losing power on decks 7 through 15. But the real blow came from an unexpected source. As the devourer tried to retreat, hundreds of small alien ships surrounded it. They could not hurt it with their weapons, but they could do something else. They began broadcasting Sektar's voice on every frequency. People of all worlds, look at your gods now! See how they run when faced with real opposition. See how their mighty ship falls apart because they are too lazy to maintain it. These are not divine beings. They are just old bullies who have been living off our stolen strength for too long. The broadcast reached every corner of the system, including the inside of the devourer itself. Many of the Veltar crew were not loyal to Zephon. They were just following orders because they were afraid. But now they saw their god emperor screaming and crying as his ultimate weapon fell apart around him. They saw him ordering the deaths of billions just to protect his own power, and they decided they had had enough. This is Engineer Telvar of the Devourer, came a new voice over the radio. We are shutting down all weapons and surrendering to the human ship. Our people have become monsters and we will not be part of it anymore. Telvar, you traitor, Zephon screamed. I am your god. You must obey. You are not my god, Telvar replied quietly. You are just a very old alien who has forgotten how to be decent. One by one, other Veltar voices joined the rebellion. Soldiers threw down their weapons. Ship crews refused orders to fire on civilians. Even some of the high priests abandoned their temples and walked among the people they had once oppressed, asking for forgiveness. Zephon found himself alone on his command bridge. Surrounded by technology he could no longer control and crew members who no longer feared him. This cannot be happening, he whispered. I am immortal. I am divine. You are finished, Taman said gently. The God Emperor looked at the human captain on his screen. For the first time in 3,000 years, Zephon saw himself clearly. He was not a god. He was not even a good leader. He was just a frightened old being who had been lying for so long that he had started to believe his own lies. What happens to me now? He asked in a very small voice. That, Taman said, will be up to the people you hurt. The moment Captain Taman finished speaking, alarms began ringing throughout the temple. Zephon's perfect face twisted with rage and his silver skin blazed with angry light. Destroy them, he commanded. The other Veltar raised their hands and bolts of golden energy shot toward the humans. But instead of being burned to death, Taman, Minji, and Hyunwoo disappeared in a shimmer of blue light. They reappeared on the bridge of the Indomitable. Deho was standing at the transporter controls, grinning. I have been monitoring your life signs, the old engineer said. When your heart rate spiked, I beamed you back. Good timing, Taman said, rushing to his captain's chair. Red alert! All hands to battle stations. On the main screen, they could see the Veltar temple ships rising from the planet's surface. But these were not the same 12 ships from before. Now there were over 100 vessels, each one larger and more frightening than the last. Captain, Hyunwoo reported from his tactical station. I am reading massive energy buildups from all enemy ships. Whatever they are planning, it is going to be big. Zephon's voice filled the bridge again, but this time it was full of divine fury. You have insulted the gods themselves. Now you will face the full power of heaven. The lead temple ship opened like a flower, revealing a weapon that looked like a miniature star. Pure energy began gathering in its center, growing brighter and hotter by the second. "Brace for impact," Taman ordered. The weapon fired. A beam of concentrated starfire struck the Indomitable's shields. The ship shook like it was caught in an earthquake, and sparks flew from control panels all over the bridge. "Shields down to 60%, Daiho called out. But before the Veltar could fire again, something unexpected happened. The beam of energy that hit their shields was absorbed by the ship's systems and converted into power. "Captain," Daiho said with excitement, "our adaptive shielding is learning their attack patterns. Each shot they fire makes us stronger." Zephon sounded confused when he spoke again. "How do they resist divine fire?" "Science," Taman replied simply. The temple ships spread out and began attacking from all directions. Some fired energy beams, others launched missiles that looked like golden comets, and a few tried to trap the Indomitable in artificial gravity wells. But every attack failed. The human ship moved through the gravity traps like they were not there. The energy beams were absorbed and converted into power. The missiles were shot down by defensive lasers before they could hit. On the planets below, billions of aliens watched the battle in the sky. For the first time in 3,000 years, they saw their gods struggling against an enemy. "Minji," Taman said, "start broadcasting on all frequencies. I want everyone in this system to hear what we learned on that temple." "Yes, Captain." Minji's voice went out to every planet, every ship, and every alien in the system. She spoke in simple words that any species could understand. "People of Kepler 442, my name is Dr. Park Minji of the Earth ship Indomitable. We have just visited the Veltar Temple, and we want to tell you the truth about your so-called gods." She transmitted the recordings her scanner had made. The aliens watching could see for themselves how the Veltar used tiny machines to make plants grow. They saw how the old Kethai was made young by stealing life energy from the crowd. They watched the city disappear and learned it had been moved, not destroyed. "The Veltar are not gods," Minji continued. "They are just aliens with advanced technology. They have been lying to you for thousands of years, stealing your life energy to make themselves live longer, and controlling your minds when you ask questions." On the bridge of the Indomitable, the battle continued. The Veltar were becoming desperate. More and more temple ships joined the fight, but nothing they did could hurt the human warship. "Captain," Hyunwoo said, "their tactics are getting wilder. I think they are running out of ideas." As if to prove his point, the largest temple ship began to glow with a different kind of energy. Instead of golden light, it pulsed with deep purple power. "What are they doing now?" Taman asked. Daiho checked his instruments. "They are trying to open some kind of space portal. Maybe they are calling for reinforcements?" But that was not what happened. Instead of more ships, a massive creature emerged from the portal. It looked like a cross between a dragon and a machine, with metal wings that crackled with electricity and eyes that burned like red stars. "Behold," Zephon's voice boomed across the system, "the avatar of divine wrath. No mortal technology can stand against the true power of the gods." The creature roared and breathed a stream of plasma that could have melted a moon, but when the attack hit the Indomitable, something amazing happened. The ship's hull absorbed the plasma and used it to power their own weapons. "Impossible," Zephon screamed. Taman smiled. "You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means." The avatar attacked again, this time trying to grab the human ship with claws the size of buildings. But Hyunwoo was ready. He fired a single torpedo, specially programmed by Daiho with an electromagnetic pulse. When the torpedo hit the creature, all its systems shut down at once. The mighty avatar of divine wrath stopped moving and began to fall toward the planet like a broken toy. "No," Zephon cried. "That creature took us centuries to build." "Build?" Taman repeated. "So you admit it is just a machine?" The silence that followed was loud enough to hear across the entire system. On the planets below, the watching aliens began to murmur among themselves. If the avatar was built, not summoned, then what did that say about the rest of the Veltar's miracles? Minji continued her broadcast, explaining how each godlike power was really just advanced technology. She showed them recordings of similar devices used by other civilizations. She proved that everything the Veltar could do was possible for any species with enough knowledge. "The most important thing to understand," she said, "is that you do not need gods to have good lives. You can learn to use technology yourselves. You can make your own choices, think your own thoughts, and live your own lives without anyone stealing from you or controlling you." The effect of her words was immediate. On the fourth planet, a young Kethai warrior named Sektar stood up from where he had been kneeling. He looked at the Veltar temple in his city and said something that had not been heard in 3,000 years. No. Other aliens began standing up too. On world after world, the kneeling crowds got to their feet. Some were still afraid, but they were also angry. They had been lied to for their entire lives. In space, the battle was almost over. The temple ships were retreating, their god weapons proven useless against human science. But Zephon was not finished yet. If we cannot defeat them as gods, he snarled, then we will destroy them as warriors. His personal ship, larger than all the others, began to change shape. The temple walls folded away to reveal weapons that were clearly designed for war, not worship. This was the true face of Veltar power, not divine miracles, but military might. Now we see who you really are, Taman said quietly. The God Emperor's warship fired everything it had at the Indomitable. Missiles, energy beams, gravity bombs, and weapons that had no name. The human ship was surrounded by explosions and deadly energy. But when the smoke cleared, the Indomitable was still there, stronger than before. How? Zephon whispered. Because, Taman replied, we are not afraid of false gods. He turned to Hyunwoo. Target their command ship. Full power. Yes, sir. The Indomitable's main weapon charged with a sound like thunder. When it fired, the beam was not meant to destroy Zephon's ship. Instead, it delivered the most powerful electromagnetic pulse ever created. Every piece of Veltar technology in the system shut down at once. The floating temples crashed to the ground. The God Emperor's perfect appearance flickered and showed his real face. Old, wrinkled, and very afraid. The mind control devices stopped working, freeing thousands of enslaved aliens. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Veltar looked like what they really were. Mortal beings who had been using technology to pretend they were gods, and everyone in the system could see it. The temple ships pulled back after Captain Taman's challenge. For several hours, the Indomitable waited in space while the Veltar decided what to do. Finally, Zephon's voice returned, but now it sounded different. Less angry, more curious. Captain Taman, you interest us. No species has ever spoken to gods as equals. We will allow you to visit our sacred world. Perhaps you will understand our divine nature when you see it with your own eyes. Taman looked at his crew. What do you think? Could this be a trap? Hyunwoo shook his head. Probably, but it might be our only chance to learn more about them. Dr. Minji gathered her scanning equipment. I want to study their technology up close. If we can understand how they fake their god powers, we can expose them. Daiho, you have the ship, Taman said. If we do not come back in 24 hours, return to Earth and tell them everything. The old engineer nodded. Be careful down there, Captain. Gods or not, these aliens are dangerous. A beam of golden light surrounded Taman, Minji, and Hyunwoo. They felt a strange tingling sensation, and suddenly they were standing in a massive room made of crystal and gold. The ceiling was so high they could not see it, and the walls were covered with moving pictures that showed the, Veltar performing miracles. Welcome to the sacred temple of eternal truth, said a voice behind them. They turned to see Zephon walking toward them. Up close, he was even more impressive. He stood 3 meters tall. His skin glowed like silver metal and his eyes burned with inner fire. He wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. You see before you the home of true divinity, Zephon said, raising his arms. The entire room began to glow brighter. Here we shape reality according to our will. Other Veltar entered the chamber. Each one looked perfect and powerful. They moved without making sounds, and the air around them shimmered with energy. Minji was secretly scanning everything with her hidden sensors. The readings were amazing. The Veltar were using technology so advanced it was almost like magic. But it was still technology. Come, Zephon said. Let us show you why billions worship us. He led them to a balcony that looked out over the planet's surface. Below them, representatives from all the different alien species knelt in huge groups. There were the reptilian Kethi with their green scales and sharp teeth. The insect-like Rin buzzed their wings in prayer songs. The water-breathing Mordal had built special tanks so they could join the worship. Every day they come to receive our blessings, Zephon explained. Watch. He pointed at a section of dead gray ground far below. Let there be life, he commanded. The ground began to change. Green plants sprouted and grew into beautiful trees in just seconds. Flowers bloomed and small animals appeared from nowhere. The alien worshippers cried out in joy and bowed even lower. Minji's scanner recorded everything. She could see the truth that the aliens below could not. Tiny machines too small to see with normal eyes were rebuilding the dead ground from the inside. The Veltar had not created life. They had just moved it from one place to another very quickly. Impressive, Taman said, but we have seen similar technology before. Zephon's perfect face showed surprise. You have seen gods create life? We have seen advanced civilizations use nanotechnology to reshape matter, Hyunwoo replied calmly. Another Veltar stepped forward. This one introduced herself as Veltar Lysira. Perhaps they need a more personal demonstration, she said to Zephon. She pointed at an old Kethai who was struggling to climb the temple steps. You, she called out. Come forward. The old reptilian alien crawled toward them, shaking with fear and excitement. His scales were dull with age and his breathing was labored. Receive the gift of divine youth, Lysira commanded. She placed her glowing hand on the old alien's head. Light surrounded him, and when it faded, he looked 50 years younger. His scales were bright green again, and he moved with the strength of youth. The crowd of worshippers screamed with joy. Many began crying and reaching toward the Veltar with desperate hands. But Minji saw what really happened. Her scanners detected a complex energy transfer. The Veltar woman had given the old alien some life energy, but she had taken even more energy from the crowd of worshippers below. They were so excited they did not notice feeling slightly weaker. How many people did you steal life from to make that one person younger? Minji asked quietly. Lysira's glowing eyes narrowed. What did you say? I said. How many of your worshippers just had their lives shortened so you could put on that show? The temperature in the room seemed to drop. All the Veltar turned to stare at the humans. You dare question divine miracles? Zephon's voice was dangerous now. Taman stepped protectively in front of Minji. We question everything. That is what makes us human. Perhaps, said another Veltar. These creatures need to see the price of disbelief. He pointed at a section of the planet's surface. A city appeared there, filled with happy aliens going about their daily lives. Then he closed his fist. The city disappeared, just gone as if it had never existed. 1,000,000 lives ended in an instant. That city was full of heretics who questioned our divinity, the Veltar said calmly. Do you wish to share their fate? The crowd of worshippers below had seen the city vanish. They pressed their faces to the ground and prayed even harder, terrified that they might be next. Hyunwoo's hand moved slowly toward his weapon. Taman caught his eye and shook his head slightly. Not yet, I see, Taman said. You rule through fear. We rule because we are gods, Zephon replied. Fear is simply the proper response to divine power. Minji was still scanning. She had detected something important about the city that vanished. Captain, she whispered, that city was not destroyed. It was moved, transported to another location using matter transmission technology. So no one actually died? I do not think so. But the people here do not know that. Zephon led them deeper into the temple. They passed rooms full of amazing technology disguised as religious artifacts, machines that could change the weather, devices that could make solid objects appear from thin air, and computers that could predict the future by calculating millions of possibilities. All of this could be yours, Zephon said. Kneel before us, accept our divinity, and your species will be given a place among our servants. You will live longer, grow stronger, and know the joy of serving true gods. And if we refuse, Taman asked, then you will learn why no one refuses us twice. They were brought to a great hall where thousands of aliens sat in meditation. All of them had the same empty look in their eyes. They breathed in perfect rhythm and moved like parts of a machine. These are our most devoted followers, Lysira explained. They have given themselves completely to us. Their individual thoughts and desires have been replaced with pure devotion. Minji felt sick. The aliens in the hall were not meditating. They were being controlled. Her scanners detected implants in their brains that were broadcasting control signals. You turned them into robots, she said. We freed them from the burden of independent thought, Zephon corrected. Now they know perfect happiness. That is not happiness, Hyunwoo said angrily. That is slavery. You speak of things you do not understand, Zephon replied. His voice was getting colder. We have ruled this system for 3,000 years. In that time we have ended all wars, cured all diseases, and brought order to chaos. If that requires some adjustment of primitive minds, then so be it. Taman looked around the hall full of mind-controlled slaves. He thought of the city that had been made to disappear to frighten people. He remembered the old alien who was made young by stealing life from others. I have seen enough, he said. Good, Zephon smiled. Then you will kneel and accept our— I have seen enough to know that you are not gods, Taman interrupted. You are parasites. You steal life, freedom, and hope from innocent people. You use advanced technology to trick them into worshipping you. And when they question you, you terrorize them into submission. The hall went completely silent. Even the mind-controlled aliens stopped their breathing exercises. You have made a grave mistake, Zephon said softly. No one speaks to gods this way. Then it is a good thing you are not gods, Taman replied. You are just bullies with fancy technology, and we are going to stop you. Captain Lee Taman stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching the stars of the Kepler 442 system grow larger on the main screen. His ship was the newest and strongest warship that Earth had ever built. The mission was simple: explore new worlds and find new friends among the stars. Captain, we are picking up strange signals from the fourth planet, said Lieutenant Park Minji from her science station. She was young but very smart. Her job was to study alien life and cultures. The signals look like they come from many different species. Taman walked over to look at her screen. How many species? At least 15, maybe more. But something is strange. They are all sending the same type of message over and over. Commander Kim Hyunwoo looked up from his tactical station. He was Taman's second in command and best friend since military academy. What kind of messages? Minji frowned at her readings. They sound like prayers, all directed toward the third planet in this system. The main screen changed to show a beautiful blue and gold world. Large cities floated in the sky, connected by bridges of pure light. Even from space, it looked magical. Captain called Engineer Choi Daeho from the back of the bridge. He was an older man who knew more about ship systems than anyone else in the fleet. I am reading energy patterns I have never seen before. That planet is using technology far beyond what we thought possible. Before Taman could respond, every screen on the bridge lit up with the same image. A tall, thin creature with glowing silver skin and eyes like burning stars appeared. When it spoke, its voice filled the ship with power that made the walls shake. I am High Veltar Zephon, God Emperor of this sacred system. You have entered divine space without permission. All who come here must bow down and worship the true gods. The alien raised one hand and somehow the lights on the bridge flickered. Submit now and you may serve us. Refuse and face the wrath of beings who control the very forces of creation. Taman looked around at his crew. They all looked surprised but not afraid. Humans had met many strange aliens before, but none who claimed to be gods. This is Captain Lee Taman of the Earthship Indomitable. We come in peace seeking friendship and trade. We would be happy to meet with your leaders and learn about your culture. The alien's glowing eyes grew brighter. I am not a leader. I am a god. You will worship me or you will die. Minji was quietly running scans of the transmission. She whispered to Taman, Captain, this signal is not natural. Someone is using technology to make his voice sound powerful and to affect our ship systems. Taman nodded and spoke to the alien again. We respect your advanced technology, but humans do not worship anyone. If you want to talk, we are willing to listen. If you want to fight, we are ready for that too. The alien's face showed shock, then anger. No one has ever refused to worship us. You will learn why we are called gods. The transmission ended. Immediately, Hyunwoo's tactical board lit up with warnings. Captain, 12 ships are heading toward us from the third planet. They are big, but their design is unlike anything in our databases. Red alert, Taman ordered. The bridge lights changed to red, and alarms sounded throughout the ship. All hands to battle stations. As the alien ships got closer, they could see that each one looked like a flying temple. Golden walls covered with strange symbols. Tall spires that crackled with energy, and what looked like wings made of pure light. Captain, Minji said, studying her sensors. I am detecting life signs on the fourth planet. Millions of different aliens, but they are all very afraid right now. Afraid of what? Afraid of us. They think we are going to anger their gods. One of the temple ships moved ahead of the others. Zephon's voice filled the bridge again, but this time it came from outside their ship. Behold, lesser beings. Watch as we demonstrate the power of true divinity. The temple ship began to glow, and suddenly the space around the Indomitable filled with what looked like golden lightning. The energy struck their shields and made the whole ship shake. Shields holding at 90%, reported Hyunwoo. Whatever that was, our defenses can handle it. Daeho looked confused as he studied his engineering displays. Captain, That energy attack followed patterns I recognize. It is very advanced, but it is still just technology. Very fancy technology, but nothing that breaks the laws of physics. The temple ship surrounded the Indomitable. Zephon's voice came again, but now he sounded angry instead of confident. How do you resist divine power? What manner of demons are you? Taman smiled. We are humans, and we do not believe in magic. Through her science station, Minji was learning more about the system. She had found records of the many alien species that lived here. All of them had been worshipping the Veltar for thousands of years. The Veltar gave them technology and protection, but in return they had to pray every day and give offerings. Captain, I think I understand what is happening here. These Veltar have convinced everyone that they are gods by using advanced technology. But look at this. She showed him energy readings from the planets below. The Veltar are taking something from all those aliens. Some kind of life energy. That is how they stay alive for so long. They are stealing life from their worshippers? Yes. The average lifespan of species in this system is only half what it should be, while the Veltar live for thousands of years. Taman felt anger growing in his chest. He had seen many bad things in space, but this was worse than most. These false gods were slowly killing millions of innocent beings just to make themselves live longer. Hyunwoo, charge all weapons. Diho, prepare the shield generators for maximum power. Minji, start recording everything. Recording for what purpose? She asked. Evidence. When this is over, everyone in this system is going to learn the truth about their so-called gods. The largest temple ship moved closer, and Zephon appeared on their screen again. This time his perfect face showed cracks of worry. You will submit, or we will destroy you and everyone you have ever known. Taman stood up from his captain's chair and looked directly at the alien who claimed to be a god. Hi, Veltar Zephon. I am Captain Lee Taman of the United Earth Space Force. We do not submit to anyone. We do not worship false gods, and we do not allow bullies to hurt innocent people. If you want to fight, you will get one. But I promise you this. When we are done, your people will know exactly what you really are.